21:47 hours, February 21st, 1944. High above nighttime Germany, 17,000 feet in the air. Wing Commander Thomas Mitchell froze in his pilot seat of the Lancaster LM-227. His flight engineer, Sergeant James Crawford, whispered 3 words into the intercom that sent a chill down Mitchell's spine. "The Phantom is here." Mitchell knew instantly what that meant. For 3 months, a story had been spreading through the RAF bomber crews like a virus of fear. A German night fighter, striking from absolute darkness, no engine noise, no warning, only the sudden terrifying scream over the radio, and another Lancaster plummeting from the sky, a blazing inferno. The RAF crews called him the Phantom of Sint-Truiden. The Luftwaffe knew him by a different name, Major Heinz-Wolfgang Schnaufer, and on this night, over the Ruhr Valley, Schnaufer was about to accomplish something that would leave military historians stunned, even 80 years later. In just 97 minutes, he would tear 9 RF bombers from the sky, 9 4-engined Lancaster bombers, 63 British airmen dead, 10 prisoners of war, and 0 hits on his own aircraft. Mitchell never saw him coming. To understand how a single man became the living embodiment of death in the night sky, we must travel back 3 years, to a time when the RAF believed the night belonged to them, 1941. The RAF bomber campaign against Germany was gaining intensity. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris had a simple doctrine: night attacks with massive bomber streams. Hundreds of Lancaster, Halifax, and Sterling bombers sweeping across Germany in the darkness, turning cities to rubble. The loss rate acceptable, 2 to 3% per mission. The German night fighters, with their primitive radar systems, struggled to find the bombers in the dark. The RAF crews felt safe. The night protected them. Then everything changed. Sint-Truiden Air Base, Belgium. Here, the Luftwaffe stationed its elite night fighter unit, Nachtjagdgeschwader 1, 4th Squadron. And here, in December 1941, began the transformation of a 19-year-old lieutenant into the deadliest hunting machine in the night sky, Heinz-Wolfgang Schnaufer. Born February 16, 1922, in Kahl, Black Forest. Son of a wealthy wine merchant, brilliant education, perfect eyesight, 20/15 in both eyes, a genetic advantage that would cost thousands their lives. But eyesight alone didn't make a night fighter. The training was murderous. Of 100 pilots who began the night fighter training program, only 12 survived the first 6 months in combat. The demands were superhuman. You had to be able to fly in absolute darkness. No horizon reference, only instruments. While simultaneously scanning the night sky for tiny shadows that might be British bombers, while enemy gunners hunted for you, while your own crew interpreted radar echoes, while flying at 250 miles per hour through freezing air at 20,000 feet. Most pilots failed. Their brains couldn't process the information overload. They flew into the ground, or they lost their bearings and crashed, or they suffered mental breakdowns. Schnaufer was different. His flight instructors noticed it immediately. The young lieutenant possessed an uncanny ability to think in 3 dimensions. He could predict the position of an enemy bomber before the radar even detected it. He understood vector geometry intuitively, and he had something you couldn't train: absolute nerve. His flight engineer, Staff Sergeant Fritz Rumpelhardt, described it in a 1989 interview. Heinz was a machine. No pulse above 70, no matter what happened. Bomber exploded 20 meters in front of us. 70. 4 tail gunners firing at us. 70. I never saw a man with such coldness. On June 2nd, 1942, Schnaufer scored his first kill. An RAF Halifax over Belgium, 23.17 hours. 3-second burst from 100 meters. The Halifax broke apart in the air. Schnaufer felt nothing. No joy, no regret, Only cold professionalism. 7 men dead. Statistics. The RAF had no idea what was coming. But then, they discovered something that would turn their fear into blank panic. The German night fighter with the call sign D5 Pulse GL was flying a Messerschmitt Bf 110 G4, equipped with a revolutionary weapon, Lichtenstein SN-2 radar combined with Schräge Musik. Schräge Musik, literally, jazz music. But in the context of night fighting, it meant death from below. Two 20mm MG 151 cannons mounted behind the cockpit, angled upwards at 70 degrees. This configuration allowed Schnaufer to position himself under a bomber where the tail gunner couldn't see him, and then fire vertically into the unprotected belly, into the fuel tanks, into the bomb bays. The results were apocalyptic. A 3-second burst from 50 meters directly into the wing tanks of a Lancaster. The aircraft exploded in a 600-foot fireball. 7 men, vaporized, no time to scream, no time to pray, only fire, and then nothing. And Schnaufer became a master at it. The RAF began to recognize patterns. Bombers weren't disappearing randomly. They were disappearing in groups, along specific routes, and always seconds apart, as if an invisible demon was methodically plowing through the formation. Air Vice Marshal Ralph Cochrane wrote in a secret memo dated March 17, 1943, "We have a problem. A German night fighter is operating with effectiveness that shatters our statistical models. His kill rate is 1,600% above average. Identification unknown. Method unknown. Solution unknown." The RAF didn't know that this unknown pilot was just beginning the deadliest period of his career. Night of May 24th to 25th, 1943. RAF attack on Dortmund. 826 bombers. RAF Bomber Command expected losses of 20 to 25 aircraft. Normal, acceptable. They lost 38 bombers. Schnaufer alone destroyed 7 of them. 7 Lancaster bombers in 4 hours and 17 minutes. 49 British airmen dead, 9 prisoners of war. But that was only the beginning. The RAF analyzed the wreckage. All 7 bombers showed the same damage pattern, 20mm hits from below. Vertically, concentrated on the wing route between the inner engines, precise, methodical, surgical. An RAF ballistics expert, squadron leader Geoffrey Blackwell, wrote in his report, "This is not the work of a normal pilot. The precision of the bursts suggests superhuman spatial awareness. The gunner has to hit a target point of less than 2 square meters, in absolute darkness, at a relative speed of 30 to 50 miles per hour, and do it consistently. Statistically, this should be impossible, but Schnaufer made the impossible routine. His method was brutally simple. The Lichtenstein SN-2 radar detected enemy bombers at 13,000 feet. His radio operator, Staff Sergeant Wilhelm Gensler, vectored him in. At 1,600 feet, Schnaufer's superhuman night vision took over. He identified the bomber type by its silhouette. Lancaster, 108-foot wingspan, 4 Merlins, cruising speed 210 miles per hour, weak point between the inner engines where the fuel tanks were located. The partnership between Schnaufer, Rumpelhardt and Gensler was legendary. Wilhelm Gensler, 23 years old, was from Munich. Before the war, he had been a radio mechanic at Telefunken. The Lichtenstein SN-2 radar was complicated, finicky, temperamental. Gensler understood it like no other. He could distinguish jamming signals from genuine targets. When even the engineers gave up, he could estimate the range to within 160 feet just by the tone of the radar echo. He could anticipate enemy deception tactics before they happened, and he trusted Schnaufer absolutely. In 3 years, they flew 164 missions together, 121 kills. 0 communication errors. Gensler said in a rare 1987 interview, "I didn't need words with Heinz. He knew what I was thinking." I knew what he would do. We were like one organism. When the radar showed a target, I just said the numbers: 320 degrees, 8,000 feet, climbing. Schnaufer corrected the course before I finished the sentence. Perfection. Every single day. Fritz Rumpelhardt, the flight engineer, was the third link in this deadly chain. 28 years old, from Hanover, a trained aircraft mechanic. His job, to keep the Bf-110 alive, at minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. At altitudes where the air was so thin that normal men passed out, at G-forces that crushed organs, Rumpelhardt kept the aircraft flying through sheer skill and stubbornness. He monitored 47 critical systems simultaneously: engine temperature, oil pressure, fuel level, hydraulics, electrics, oxygen. And he had to do it all in the dark, by flickering red light, while tail gunners fired at them. And the Bf-110 was thrown around by air turbulence, one false reading, one missed warning, and all three died. They never died, not in 164 missions. Rumpelhardt said in 1989, "I entrusted Gensler and Schnaufer with my life 164 times. They never dropped it. That creates a bond stronger than family, stronger than blood. If one of us had died, the other two would have gone with him, not physically, but internally. The three of us were one." The Bf-110 G4 itself was a marvel of German engineering. Messerschmitt had created an aircraft that shouldn't have existed. Two Daimler-Benz DB605B engines, 1,275 horsepower each. Top speed 370 miles per hour. Range 1,300 miles. Ceiling 36,000 feet. Armament: two 30mm Mk-108 cannons in the nose. Two 20mm MG-151 cannons in jazz music configuration. One 7.92mm MG-81 machine gun for rear defense. But the weight. The Bf-110 weighed 2,300 pounds fully loaded. The Lichtenstein radar alone, 500 pounds. The antenna, 175 pounds. The ammunition, 2,400 pounds. The fuel, 2,800 pounds. Every ounce counted. Every ounce slowed the aircraft down, reduced maneuverability, ate up fuel. And yet Schnaufer flew this monster like a fighter. Rumpelhardt described it this way: the Bf-110 was a truck, heavy, slow, sluggish. But in Schnaufer's hands, it danced. He understood every pound, every Newton meter. He flew at the limit of what physics allowed, and sometimes beyond. I remember one night, February 1944, we were chasing a Lancaster. Schnaufer pulled the Bf-110 into a vertical climb at 360 miles per hour. The wings should have torn off. The engine mounts should have broken. But he knew exactly how much the aircraft could take. We climbed underneath the Lancaster, jazz music. 3 seconds. The bomber exploded. We fell back into normal flight. 0 damage. That was Schnaufer. Perfection on a razor's edge. Schnaufer reduced speed to bomber tempo, positioned himself 160 feet directly below the target, calibrated the angle, waited for perfect stability. Then a 3-second burst from both MG-151 cannons, 120 shells, 40 pounds of projectiles. The Lancaster no longer existed 2.7 seconds later. Schnaufer repeated this process 9 times on the night of February 21st, 1944. 9 Lancaster bombers, 9 perfect kills, 97 minutes. Flight Lieutenant David Penrose was the sole survivor of his 7-man crew. He was the tail gunner in one of the 9 Lancasters. In 1979, he gave an interview to the Imperial War Museum about that night. His voice still trembled, 35 years later. "I suddenly heard our bomb aimer, Sergeant Murphy, over the intercom. Fire below us. Fire directly below us. And then the world exploded. The entire wing turned into a fireball. The heat melted my plastic visor. I saw Captain Henderson trying to maintain control, but the elevators were gone. We went into a vertical dive. I managed to wriggle out of the turret and bail out. My parachute opened at 2,600 feet. As I floated down, I saw it. 8 more bombers, all burning, all falling, all within a 10-mile radius, as if a demon had flown through our formation and killed each of us personally. I landed 2 miles from our Lancaster. Of my 6 comrades, I found only charred remains. The German pilot didn't kill them. He vaporized them. Penrose was one of only 10 survivors that night. 53 of his comrades died. And Schnaufer, 0 hits, 0 damage. Back to base, debriefing, 6 hours of sleep, ready for the next night. The RAF was desperate. Their losses were mounting. The morale of the bomber crews was collapsing. Crews refused to fly. Some deserted. Others suffered mental breakdowns before takeoff. Air Chief Marshal Harris ordered an emergency meeting at Bomber Command Headquarters, High Wycombe, on February 29, 1944. Present, 47 senior officers. Topic: the Phantom of Sint Truiden. The minutes of that meeting were declassified in 1974. They reveal the extent of the panic. Group Captain Leonard Cheshire, DFC and Bar, DSO and 2 Bars, one of the RAF's most celebrated bomber pilots. Our crews are terrified, not of flak, not of searchlights, of him. They hear the rumors. A German pilot who shot down over 70 bombers, who comes out of nowhere, who never misses. Some crews think he's superhuman, an Uber-ace, a Nazi-engineered super soldier. Air Vice Marshal Donald Bennett, commander of the Pathfinder Force. The stats don't lie. A single night fighter has increased our loss rate by 4.7%. One man is costing us 40 bombers a month, 280 airmen a month. Projected annually, 480 aircraft, 360 trained crew members. This is unacceptable. Air Chief Marshal Harris's response was ice cold. Then find him and kill him. The RAF launched Operation Lucifer, a dedicated mission to identify, locate, and eliminate Schnaufer. They failed. Schnaufer's ability to vanish was as deadly as his ability to kill. After every attack, his Bf 1-10 dissolved into the darkness. Different landing strips, unpredictable flight paths. RAF intelligence only knew that somewhere in Belgium or Western Germany, a night fighter was systematically destroying their best hope for victory. But then, the RAF made a breakthrough, or so they thought. A downed night fighter was recovered near Aachen. April 7, 1944, the Bf 110 belonged to Nachtjagdgeschwader 1. In the cockpit, Lieutenant Hans Krause. Dead, but his flight log survived. The flight log contained 73 missions, 19 kills, and a note on the last page. Major Schnaufer is a god. I saw him kill 9 bombers in one night. I don't think he's human. The RAF finally had a name. Major Schnaufer. Nachtjagdgeschwader 1, 4th Staffel. Stationed, variably. The name spread through the RAF units like a curse. Briefings now mentioned him openly. If you encounter Schnaufer, pray. Some crews painted crosses on their bombers. Others wore lucky charms. Desperate men clung to superstition because logic and tactics had failed. Meanwhile, Schnaufer continued to fly, night after night, a phantom in the dark, collecting more and more souls. By May 1944, Schnaufer reached 84 confirmed kills, all at night. His Bf 110, Werk number 730301, call sign D5+GL, had become a legend. The ground crew painted small white bomber silhouettes on the fuselage, 84 symbols, each representing 7 dead men. But Schnaufer never looked at them. No emotion, no reflection, just the next flight, the next target. The next night, Fritz Rumpelhardt described Schnaufer's mental state in his 1989 interview. Heinz wasn't the same person anymore. He barely spoke, ate mechanically, slept 4 hours a night, got up, flew, killed, landed, repeated. I asked him once, in the summer of '44. Heinz, Do you feel anything when you kill them? He looked at me with these dead eyes and said, "What am I supposed to feel? They'd do the same to us." Then he turned and walked away. I never asked again. The RAF grew increasingly desperate. Their tactics against Schnaufer all failed. Increased vigilance, useless when death came from below. More tail gunners, irrelevant against jazz music, obscured flight paths. Schnaufer found them anyway. But the RAF tried everything. In July 1944, they introduced Operation Mandrel, electronic jamming devices aboard special Halifax bombers designed to blind German Lichtenstein radar. The theory was solid. The practice, Gensler laughed about it. He said in 1987, the British jamming signals were like children screaming in a symphony. I heard them immediately, and I knew, where there's a jammer, there are bombers nearby. The RAF helped us find them. Then the RAF tried Monica, a rearward-facing warning radar on the bombers. It was supposed to detect German night fighters and sound the alarm before they attacked. The problem? Monica broadcast a signal. A signal Schnaufer could use, Gensler recalled. Suddenly the bombers had a beacon on their backs. The Monica signal was stronger and clearer than our own radar. We followed it like a street map, directly to the bombers. Thanks, RAF. The British scientists desperately tried to find an answer. At the Telecommunications Research Establishment in Malvern, 300 engineers worked day and night on countermeasures. Dr. Robert Cockburn, senior scientist, wrote in his report on September 19, 1944, "We have developed 17 different electronic countermeasures. All have been circumvented or exploited by the German night fighters within weeks. We are fighting pilots who understand their systems better than we understand ours, especially one pilot. Reports indicate Nachtjagdgeschwader 1, call sign Teufel 7, shows adaptive intelligence that is terrifying. He learns from every encounter. He anticipates our tactics. It's as if he's reading our research. Schnaufer wasn't reading their research. He was simply better. Every new RAF tactic he studied, every new device he analyzed. And then he found a way to beat it. The RAF introduced corkscrew maneuvers, radical, spiraling dives when a night fighter was spotted. Schnaufer's response: he anticipated the direction of the turn based on the formation and positioned himself under the bomber before the dive. The Lancaster corkscrewed directly into his line of fire. By October 1944, the RAF was at the end of its rope. They'd tried everything: electronics, tactics, route, timing, altitude. Nothing worked. Schnaufer continued to fly. Schnaufer continued to kill. Group Captain Hamish Mahadi, in charge of RAF Bomber Command Tactics, wrote in a desperate memo on August 12, 1944, "We can't stop him. Every night we lose bombers. Every night we know he's out there. And every morning we count our dead, average 3 bombers a night, attributed to Schnaufer, 21 men. Every night, this one German pilot is costing us more than 10 complete flak batteries. I have no solutions left." Then came the night of October 24th, 25th, 1944, a night referred to in RAF records only as Black Tuesday, even though it was technically Tuesday morning. RAF attack on Karlsruhe, 617 bombers, clear night, full moon. Perfect conditions for night fighters. Schnaufer flew 7 sorties that night, 7 separate takeoffs and landings. Between 21:47 hours on October 24th and 04:12 hours on October 25th, he destroyed 9 Lancaster bombers, but these 9 were special. Among them, Lancaster LL-742 of No. 50 Squadron RAF, Wing Commander Guy Gibson, a hero of Operation Chastise, the Dambusters raid, a recipient of the Victoria Cross, the most famous bomber pilot in the RAF. Gibson met his end when Schnaufer's 20mm shells tore his Lancaster apart at 18,000 feet. All 7 crew members were killed. The loss was devastating to RAF morale. The news reached London at 7:23 a.m. Prime Minister Winston Churchill was personally informed. His reaction documented in cabinet papers: "A single German pilot has killed our best man. This is unacceptable." But the RAF was powerless. Schnaufer remained invisible, untouchable, deadly. By November 1944, Schnaufer had reached 100 kills, the only night fighter pilot in the world to achieve this. The Luftwaffe awarded him the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds, one of the highest German military decorations, awarded by Hermann Göring himself. Schnaufer's reaction: none. He simply said, "I am doing my duty." 700 dead British airmen. His duty. The RAF bomber crews developed a morbid culture around Schnaufer. Some units even started a pool. Who would survive an encounter with Schnaufer? The answer: no one, ever. Flight Sergeant Ronald Blackwell, a survivor of 4 Schnaufer attacks on different formations, recounted in 1987, "I never saw him. None of us saw him. 4 times I flew in formations he attacked. 4 times I saw bombers next to me explode. And 4 times I survived only because he chose other targets. Why? No idea. Chance? Fate? I only know. Every time the alarm went off, night fighter, 6 o'clock low, I prayed, not to God. I prayed that Schnaufer would choose someone else. I'm ashamed to this day. But every one of us thought the same thing. Take him, not me." This mentality destroyed the camaraderie that held RAF bomber crews together. Men who had trained together, flown together, fought together, were now praying for each other's death in order to survive. Schnaufer wasn't just destroying aircraft, he was destroying souls. On December 18, 1944, Schnaufer reached 110 kills. The RAF desperately analyzed his pattern of success. The math was staggering. On average, Schnaufer flew 4 nights a week. On average, he killed 1.7 bombers per night, extrapolated 35 bombers per month, 245 bombers per year, 1,715 dead RAF airmen per year. A single man. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris wrote in his private diary on December 23, 1944, "I have 125,000 men under my command. And a single German pilot is doing more damage than some of our entire groups are doing good. How am I supposed to justify this?" The RAF couldn't. So they tried desperation. In the final months of the war, they increasingly flew during new moons, in bad weather, in conditions that hampered night fighters. It didn't help. Schnaufer flew anyway. And he killed anyway. His final kill tally, 121 confirmed aerial victories, all achieved at night. 847 dead Allied airmen, primarily RAF, some USAF. The most successful night fighter ever, of all nations, of all wars. No other nation produced a night fighter with even close to that effectiveness. The most successful British night fighter, Wing Commander Brants Burbridge, 21 kills. The most successful American, Colonel John Gorrie, 17 kills. Schnaufer had surpassed them by factors, but numbers alone don't capture the psychological warfare Schnaufer waged. His mere name on a briefing board sent seasoned pilots into a cold sweat. Crews wrote farewell letters before missions if intelligence reports suggested Schnaufer might be operating. The RAF conducted a post-war psychological study on the impact of Schnaufer on bomber crew morale. The report, declassified in 1995, reveals disturbing details. Of 2,400 RAF bomber veterans surveyed, 73% stated that Schnaufer was their greatest single source of fear. More than flak, more than German fighter pilots in general, more than mechanical failure, a single name terrorized thousands of men. Dr. Catherine Mills, lead psychologist on the study, the data reveals a phenomenon we call focused existential anxiety. The crews knew, statistically, that the probability of specifically encountering Schnaufer was minimal. But the fact that he existed, that he was real, that he had killed hundreds, that created a psychological burden that could not be rationally justified. Some men developed outright phobias. Others described nightmares in which Schnaufer was a supernatural being hunting them personally. The mental warfare he waged was perhaps more effective than his physical kills. Who did and Schnaufer himself? What did the man who killed 847 people feel? After the war, historians and journalists attempted to interview Schnaufer. Most failed. He rarely spoke about the war. But there is one interview conducted by the British newspaper The Telegraph in 1947, shortly before his death. The journalist asked, "Do you feel remorse for the 847 men you killed?" Schnaufer's response, "Remorse? You don't understand. It was war. They were trying to destroy our cities. Kill women, children, civilians. I stopped them. If I shot down a bomber, I maybe saved 100 German lives on the ground. So, no remorse. Only regret that it was necessary." The journalist, "But the men in the bombers were also just soldiers, following orders." Schnaufer, "Then they should have gotten better orders." The interview ended there. Schnaufer stood up and left. It's easy to see Schnaufer as a monster, an emotionless killer. But the reality was more complex. Fritz Rumpelhardt told a story that paints a different picture. March 1945. After a mission, Schnaufer's Bf-110 landed with a problem. A British airman was entangled in the landing gear, not intentionally. The man had bailed out of his destroyed bomber, and his parachute had become caught in Schnaufer's landing gear. He was hanging there, 20,000 feet above Germany, unconscious, in minus 40 degrees Celsius temperatures. Schnaufer could have retracted the landing gear and killed the man, or let him be torn off during landing. Instead, he flew at low altitude for 40 minutes with the landing gear extended back to base, landed as gently as possible. The ground crew cut the British airman free. He was hypothermic, but alive. The man was Flight Sergeant Thomas Blackwood of No. 12 Squadron RAF. He survived the war as a prisoner of war. In 1983, he penned a letter to Schnaufer's widow. After Schnaufer's death, the letter read, "Your husband could have killed me. It would have been simpler, safer for him. But he saved me. I've never understood why. He killed 847 of us, but he saved one. Maybe there was still a human being under that killer. I want to believe that there was. Was there? Was Schnaufer a human being who became a killing machine? Or was he a machine that occasionally displayed humanity? We'll never know. What we do know is that Schnaufer's tactical genius revolutionized night fighter doctrine. After the war, the Royal Air Force, the United States Air Force, and the Soviet Air Force studied his methods. His jazz music tactic became standard in modern interceptors. His use of radar combined with visual reconnaissance is now the foundation of every night fighter training program worldwide. Modern combat pilots learn about Schnaufer at military academies in 12 countries. Not as a hero, not as a villain, but as a case study in tactical perfection. Colonel James MacDonald, USAF, director of the United States Air Force Weapons School, said in 2019, "Schnaufer proved that a single, exceptionally trained pilot with superior tactics can have a strategic impact. His methods are still relevant. 75 years later, we teach his attack vectors, his energy management, his situational awareness. If you want to understand modern night fighter tactics, start with Schnaufer. But there's another perspective, the perspective of the men who survived, the men who saw their comrades vaporize beside them, the men who knew the name Schnaufer as synonymous with death. Ronald Blackwell, who survived Schnaufer's attacks. 4 times and passed away in 2003. Before his death, he gave a final interview for the Imperial War Museum. His last words about Schnaufer were, "Was he brilliant? Yes. Was he effective? Absolutely. Was he a hero? That's for the Germans to decide. For me, he was the reason why 218 of my comrades never came home. Do I respect his skill? I have to. Do I forgive him? I've never managed to. Every night since 1944, I see bombers burning. I hear men screaming, and I know that a single man, a brilliant, deadly, unstoppable man, was responsible. History will call him an ace. I call him the reason I couldn't sleep for 60 years. These aren't just statistics from dusty archives. These are the moments that decided between life and death. Real men, real fear, real consequences. These stories must never be forgotten. If these historical truths are important to you, then support with YouTube's Super Thanks. The golden heart below. Every Super Thanks enables me to spend weeks in archives, to digitize rare RAF and Luftwaffe documents, to interview last surviving witnesses. Help me preserve this story for coming generations, so the lessons are not lost. Heinz-Wolfgang Schnaufer survived the war. Unlike the 847 men who encountered him, he died on July 15, 1950, in Bordeaux, France, not in combat, a car accident. Schnaufer was driving his Mercedes 170S when a French truck ran the intersection. The collision killed Schnaufer instantly. He was 28 years old. The irony was cruel. A man who survived 121 aerial engagements, hundreds of flak bursts, thousands of gunner rounds, died on a French country road by a civilian accident. Fritz Rumpelhardt said in 1989, "Maybe it was justice. 847 men died by his hand. Maybe he had to die young, too. I don't know. I only know that the Heinz I knew in 1950 wasn't the man I met in 1941. The war had made him hollow. He carried the souls of the dead with him. Maybe the accident was a redemption." Schnaufer's funeral was held in Kau, his hometown. 400 people attended, former Luftwaffe comrades, family members, and 3 British veterans. 3 RAF airmen who had flown against Schnaufer survived and now honored his coffin. One of them, Wing Commander Peter Townsend, said, "We hated him, we feared him, but we respected him. He was a warrior, like us. On the wrong side, perhaps, but a warrior, nonetheless." Is that enough? Is respect enough to justify 847 deaths? Is military brilliance enough to excuse the grief of hundreds of families? History doesn't give easy answers. It only gives us facts, and the facts are Heinz-Wolfgang Schnaufer was the deadliest night fighter of all time. His methods changed aerial warfare forever. His victims paid the ultimate price for his perfection. And in the silent nights over Germany, when historians pore over war diaries, the same name always appears on British casualty lists, on German success reports, on the gravestones of 847 men who didn't survive an encounter with the Phantom. Schnaufer, the Phantom of Sint-Truiden, death from below. What impressed you the most? Many viewers have shared incredible family stories. Grandfathers who flew in RAF bombers, letters found in attics, or diaries that spanned generations. Share your family history from this time below. Every comment is a piece of history that we preserve together.